Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be with y'all tonight. This brief webinar is intended to provide you with some quick tips and strategies, kind of getting at some troubleshooting during this challenging COVID-19 phase that we find ourselves all in. I've been working with the Autism Society for, I guess 8 years now. And I've been working in the field of autism intervention since I finished college 22 years ago or 21 years ago. So I've been working in this field for a long time, but by no means do I have all the answers for you tonight. I wish that I could say that I do, but I don't. What I do know for sure is that these are challenging times. And right now, for example, I'm presenting this webinar to you from my closet, hiding behind three locked doors, because there's a very good chance that two of my three children are going to try to bust the door down at any given point. So hopefully you guys won't have to listen to that this evening. But anyway, without further ado, let's see if we can get this presentation to advance. Here we go. So I'm going to talk about very basic strategies, fundamental strategies that are rooted really in the concept of structure. And I'm sure that if you guys are, you are all parents and caregivers, or maybe some of you are professionals who are supporting folks with autism. So you know this concept of structure well. I'm sure you've heard it a gazillion times. And so I'm going to touch on some of the key elements that comprise this broader definition of structure. And I define, and the Autism Society of North Carolina defines structure as an organized environment, organized activities, and organized interactions with predictable and understandable elements from the perspective of the person with autism that ultimately promote greater independence for that person with autism, and in many cases can also reduce some of the challenging behaviors, but more importantly, some of the fear and anxiety that underlies some of the challenging behaviors that we see in some folks with autism during these challenging times, but also apart from these challenging times. So the big strategies or main areas I'm going to touch on are just, and I'll go into a little bit of depth on each of these, is of course to maintain important routines and predictability as much as you can, making a plan for the day to the best that you can, breaking the hard stuff up, and I'll talk about, of course, what I mean by that more, celebrating the little successes, proactively including calming and movement activities within the individual's day, and of course within your own day as well. This is critical for all of us right now, but particularly for folks with autism. And then finally, being the calm in the storm. So these are the big areas I'm going to touch on tonight. I want to say right out of the gate that this is a brief webinar, and so by no means is this a deep dive into evidence-based practices in autism intervention, but I want you to know that there are a lot of recorded webinars on our website, and that library is literally growing each day. We've been recording and producing more during this COVID period than really any other time, because of a lot of us are trapped in our closets, and so we're trying to get some of these webinars out to you all. So I want you to know that those are out there. And there's also a lot of other great webinars being offered by some very reputable groups, UNC Chapel Hill, the Autism Science Foundation, the list goes on of where you can find some really great free recorded webinars. So, but I do encourage you to look at our website, because many of these topics that I'm going to talk through tonight are addressed in much greater detail in those longer webinars. So, these strategies this list that I just presented to you on the previous slide, what I want to say right out of the gate is that, these are really challenging times, and many of you are working hard, or you are already working hard to address challenges associated with autism well before COVID-19, and I know that. And some of those challenges have likely been exacerbated by this current situation. Of course, many folks with autism cannot access the places that are most calming and preferred right now. For many, the predictable structure that traditional school day provided has been paused, of course, and so you caregivers are having to try to maintain that structure and predictability as best you can, and that's really, really tough. And of course, many with and without autism feel anxious and isolated right now. So I just want to say right out of the gate, with this webinar or any webinar that you encounter, anything you read, blogs, guidelines, suggestions, strategies, behavior consultation reports, all of it, I know that it's, we try to make these strategies as practical and accessible as we can. and I'm trying to present these strategies to you and trying to put myself as best I can in your shoes, even though I do not know what it's like to be the parent of a child with autism. Um, so I know though that this is all easier said than done. And I'm fully aware of that. I have three, I'm the parent of three boys. And when school was closed back in March, I imagined that I would try really hard to have it all together. The night before their school system was announced to close a little bit earlier than many in North Carolina. And so, I had a plan in mind. And so the structure, the organization, the creative, fun approaches to learning, I was going to have it all ready to roll, and I was going to be super mom, super autism, professional. I was going to do it all at the same time. Because after all, I'm an educator by training and I'm a behavior analyst. And so I felt like, I should have it together during this time, just like Mary Poppins. So I immediately launched into developing, visual supports for my own three children, to help prepare them for this phase where there was not going to be school, and their typical routines were going to be very different. And so I was trying to bring back in some of that predictability and normalcy into their lives. So I have two school-age children and one preschool-age child. And so as you can see here in these examples that I am, using with my own kids, I had to kind of develop a structure and a plan. So I immediately launched into doing all this for my kids. I also developed this very ambitious master schedule, color coding. This is not the actual example. Mine kind of looks like this though, that I was using, and I say was using. I was just trying to figure it all out, plan my full-time job, the online learning, and trying to fit it all together. And I felt like this was just going to be, I've got this covered. It's going to be not easy peasy, of course, but I felt like I had it well in hand. And then, I also learned of some amazing work that some of my colleagues at the Autism Society were doing. And this example is just one of many examples from one particular direct support professional who is working with an individual with autism every day, coming into his home and supporting him under the innovations waiver. And so this direct support professional, has developed this amazing plan of themes for each day, and devising activities that fall within each theme, and just a really creative approach to supporting this participant during these challenging times. And then, so I take all this information, I have my own plan worked out for my kids. And then some of my other friends asked me, can you please send me your ideas on how to structure up the day for my kids? So I do. And, I should have known right out of the gate that this is probably how some of them were thinking about this stuff. Just not realistic. So, now 1 month in, I know this is what they were thinking, and it's generally the same thing I'm thinking now. So, this is hard. This is really, really hard on some days, right? And I know that I'm preaching to the choir on this. For example, there was a recent day when for me in my own house, it seemed like everything was falling apart. And I hadn't fed my kids lunch, and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd been on call after call for work, and I just hadn't had a chance to get it together. And so I was upset and just feeling really overwhelmed and a little bit emotional. And my 4-year-old, just turned 4-year-old child came to me and said, "Don't worry, mommy, I already made my lunch. I made a cookie sandwich." So, my point in saying all this to you is I do not want you to think I have it all together. I do not. And I know that some of you are facing some very tough challenges right now. And so at the end of this webinar, we're also going to talk not only about these ideas I have for you, but also some other resources and supports and services that might be available to you during this time that you could access. So, I'm saying all this to you because I don't aim for perfection. Just pick one area that you want to refine, that you want to adjust in ways that will help you or your child with autism. I mean, all of these strategies I'm addressing today are highly indicated for autism, but they're also highly relevant for most folks, most children who do not have autism as well. So without further ado, let's go right in. So deciding what's important during this time and trying to hold on to those elements. So if you already have a plan for the day, that's awesome. And then that means you're already ahead of the game, of course. If you need to make adjustments or get your plan going more consistently, then pick the major activities that are most important for you and your family to hold on to. So maybe, of course, try to hold on to or refine or try to improve the extent to which you're addressing those typical routines like bedtime, bathing and meals and snacks, schoolwork or online learning time, screen time or free time using screens, and any other important, times of the day where you want chores or other tasks to be completed by your child with autism. And I would also say, try to create designated, if you haven't already, and I'm sure most of you have, but try to create designated spaces for schoolwork, if schoolwork is a part of what's happening right now for you, for schoolwork to happen, or where can the individual go? Where can your child with autism go without distractions to get that work done? Where should their screen time on phones or other portable devices occur? Where should that happen? Where can the individual with autism go to calm down if they need to? Where are the places and spaces that they can go to when they need to calm down or they need to get their energy out? And then, of course, if you have other children in the home, other siblings, then where do they go to get those same needs met, to work in a relatively distraction-free zone? So just trying to think through, and I realize that this is going to be so dependent upon where you're living and how your home is, but just trying to think about the ways that you can try to designate and delineate some spaces where these different activities can occur. Just having that kind of structure can be really helpful for some families during these challenging times. And then, be realistic and fair to yourself as you make a plan. That color-coded, elaborate example that I showed you on the previous slide, that was not realistic for me to try to do that, even though I thought it was when I was building it. I should have known better. I should have known that for me, that was not going to be something I could actually stick to and hold on to. So just be fair to yourself as you're thinking about how to set up more structure and making a plan for your day. And try not to set yourself up for failure like I did. So once when you have a basic plan for how you want the day to look, what are the big chunks of your day for you, for your children, your family? What do those chunks need to look like in big, broad strokes? Then what you've got to do is think about what's the best way to present this plan to my child with autism in a way that's understandable, most understandable and accessible to them. So you can see here that there are just a few examples of, and I know that many of you all have seen these types of tried and true visual supports before, but just wanted to make sure you knew there's a variety of different ways to present this information. Presenting a visual schedule, for example, to the individual with autism. And I want to make it clear that using a visual schedule or a to-do list, for example, whatever is most appropriate for your child, it can provide them such a sense of control over the situation and over their day. And for many folks with autism, it can reduce anxiety, we find. The schedule itself prepares the individual for transitions. It offers control. It provides a predictable and visual representation of what will be happening. For many who are more independent and you're trying to promote their independence and try to get them doing some of these activities without your constant oversight and prompting, for those, of course, these visual supports can promote independence and more autonomy. And so that was one of the main reasons I developed those visuals for my own two older children, was because I needed them to be able to move through parts of their day with less help from me, because I was just, I'm only one person. I can only do so much. And so I needed my older children to be able to follow a visual support to some extent. And so that was one of the reasons why I developed that for them. So thinking about your own child with autism, think about their level of understanding. In what way is this information, should it be presented? Should it be presented in written form? Should they develop the schedule themselves and you support them in creating a plan that's going to work? Obviously, you want to provide them with as much choice and power and control over the situation as possible. Maybe the schedule is best presented in an electronic format on a handheld device or on a phone. Maybe it needs to be in very concrete first then format. So as you can see here, this example, it shows, I can't even see what the picture is right now, something like first eat, then something else, maybe read a book. Sorry, that visual's a little unclear actually. But first and then, what's gonna happen first and what's gonna happen next? And you try to present the major transition points to your child across the day so that they can understand those major transitions. First wash hands, then eat. First brush teeth, then get dressed. First schoolwork, then iPad, or whatever those major transition and juncture points are that you need to be able to show and convey to your child to communicate more effectively with them and to provide that predictability and sense of a little bit more stability, these tools can be very helpful in doing that. And I would also say that when you develop these kinds of visual supports or to-do lists, it doesn't mean they have to look the same every day. These are actually intended to promote flexibility, because over time and the way you use these tools, they can help a person with autism to understand when the day is going to have to look different than it typically does. So in a lot of ways, these visual schedules can signal change for the individual with autism. And I would say this last but not least, just that visual supports like these are not just for younger children with autism. They're also not just for individuals with autism who need more substantial support in their day. Of course, we are all using visual supports to organize our time, to manage our work efficiently, to get our things done, to avoid forgetting important details and tasks that we all need to do. And so I would encourage you to think about the ways that you can support your more independent child with autism in being able to develop and use these tools for him or herself during this challenging coronavirus time, but also, of course, well beyond this time as well. So presenting the plan, having a plan for your day, and of course, there's going to be days where it just doesn't work like that. I've had those days where I didn't I didn't get my bathrobe till like 2 o'clock in the afternoon one day last week. Just couldn't make it happen. Um, and so for my kids, maybe they weren't getting dressed until like lunchtime that day. Just we're gonna have those days that just don't work the way we had planned for them. But having a plan, having it in written form for yourself, and then having it presented in a way that's understandable for your child or children can be really, really helpful to the overall structure and kind of orchestra of your day. So having that plan and then thinking about the next kind of tip or strategy I'm going to go into just a little bit, breaking the hard stuff up. So there are parts of the day that I'm sure your child with autism or individual with autism enjoys, or maybe it's highly preferred. For some, I'm sure accessing screen time, movies, iPad, those kinds of activities, jumping on the couch. There's probably lots of activities that the individual may gravitate towards and enjoy. But there may also need to be some things that that individual does that they don't particularly want to do or that are more challenging for them. And obviously, one of the things I'm thinking about here is the online learning component that many students with autism are having to encounter right now, which is supremely challenging for a lot of families and folks with autism. So if e-learning is stressful, for example, as it is for many of us, then make a plan to break those academic sessions up throughout the day. For most folks with autism, I would say don't try to tackle it all at once. That can be overwhelming and frustrating. Obviously, there are some folks with autism who really want to get all the work done all at once and knock it off and check it off their list and be done with it. And if that's the deal with your child with autism, then just trying to encourage them to build in a few movement breaks where they can, just to kind of help them promote their stamina and help prevent, burnout and frustration. But for many with autism, I would say try to find those points where you can break the hard stuff up and segment it so that folks don't get frustrated. And then what you want to do as you're breaking the hard activities up, whether that's online learning or whether that's chores or tasks or routines or activities that the individual doesn't particularly enjoy or they are more challenging for them, then there's 3 key questions you want to make sure you're trying to answer for the individual with autism. The first question that you want to try to answer for them is, how much do I have to do? How long? And then the second question is, how long will this last? When is this going to be over? And then when do I get to have the things I love the most, right? We all, when we're having a hard day, we all look forward to the things that give us calm and promote a sense of happiness and relaxation in ourselves. We look for those things, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel in many cases as we look towards those preferred activities or events. But for some folks with autism, they're not going to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel unless we concretely, clearly convey that for them. So here's some examples of ways to do this. And these are just a few examples. There are many ways to do this, and these are just a few of the more advanced formats, actually. So for example, if you've got classwork, that needs to be done at home, then this is one way to break it up. You've got your math worksheet with 5 problems, and when the individual with autism completes that, they pull that sticky tab off and they throw it in the trash. It's done. Then the next activity is addition flashcards that they have to do. So they complete that and that goes in the trash. And then there's a break. And you can see how the individual moves from left to right, for perhaps through this, and then they go down to reading and complete those activities. And then they're all done with their schoolwork. And so this is one way to concretely and visually convey for a student with autism who's having to do their work at home right now, how to break this up and how to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then here's another example you can see here. This is Hannah's bedroom cleaning checklist. So this is for an individual with autism who's got a routine that she needs to complete of cleaning up her room. And so her caregiver has broken up cleaning your room into concrete manageable steps and has clarified how much and how long and when is it over. And so that's a more concrete way to clarify a concept like clean your room. This can promote greater independence with getting the job done. It can reduce frustration. It can reduce some of the anxiety that the individual might have about completing those tasks. For many folks with autism, it can also reduce the need for continued engagement or verbal argument or negotiation. By having this information presented in written form, it can kind of take away the need for that back and forth that sometimes we parents engage in with our kids, and that doesn't always help when the individual is already a little bit frustrated or confused. I'll also say this, this is just one example, and I would argue that for many students with autism with whom I work, you might have to insert additional breaks into that math and reading sequence that we talked through. That's why these two errors are here, to kind of signal to you that, of course, for your own child with autism, these might need to look really different. Some folks are going to need a break, every 5 or 10 minutes, maybe even more so than that. So thinking about what the individual needs and how to segment and break this up. Here are two more quick examples. 5 math problems, then you're going to get your tablet. So concretely on the fly, breaking this down into teachable steps that are manageable for that child or individual with autism so they can see how much and how long and when is it over. Another example here with this worksheet, the caregiver, the parent broke this up into more manageable chunks for this child with autism. And you can see that he or she concretely visually showed those break points for the individual. These are just a few examples of how to think about breaking the hard stuff up during these challenging times. The next tip, little area that I wanted to just briefly touch on is try to celebrate the little successes where you can. I know that this is a really challenging time for many parents of individuals with autism, and of course for individuals with autism themselves. This is a really challenging time. But so you as caregivers and parents, I would just say try to celebrate those little moments, whether how big or how little they are, those little successes that you might be having within your day or within your week as it pertains to your child with autism. So maybe it's, for example, you were able to engage them in 15 minutes of high quality playtime where they were really engaged and you got great kind of social interaction and positive affect and lots of, just those high quality interaction, kind of the happiness was there for 15 minutes with your child while you were playing together. Or maybe it's a short walk that you were able to take together, or a walk that was able to go a little longer than usual for that child or adult with autism. Getting showered and dressed before 10 a.m. might be something to celebrate. It is in my house sometimes. Maybe it was 5 tantrums today instead of 15 tantrums. That's something to celebrate. Or maybe you were able to unload the dishwasher together and your child or adult with autism was able to do that with greater independence than typical. So whatever success looks like for you, I just want to say celebrate it because you're doing the best that you can right now. I would also say, it kind of in this same vein that first, these times are tough, but for some, and certainly not all, but for some, this might be the very best time to build new skills and interests by thinking outside of the box. So we at the Autism Society recently developed a blog, and it's on our coronavirus webpage, which I'll reference at the end of this talk. And there is a ton of, all you have to do right now is Google autism activities during coronavirus, or activities for kids during coronavirus, or activities for teens with autism during coronavirus. Using all those Google search terms, it will generate a wide variety of great examples of activities that you might try that might, creative new approaches and thinking outside of the box. So whether it's having a dance party with your child for 5 minutes during the day, or yoga or stretching or exercise routines that you find online, or modified or silly versions of soccer or basketball or golf or cornhole or hot potato, um, virtual field trips, whatever, creative approach you're able to take during these challenging times. If it's a little bit successful, celebrate that. Celebrate those moments, even if it's just brief, fleeting interest and engagement that you're getting from your child. So try to celebrate that and remember that that's progress. The next brief area that I just wanted to touch on, and this is true for all of us right now. This is of course not just true for your child with autism. This is certainly true for everybody. I would assume who's listening. It's certainly true for me, is just trying to proactively plan for calming and movement breaks and movement activities throughout your day, and throughout your child's day, during these challenging times in particular, where we all are a little bit confined to our homes and our immediate neighborhoods. I'm just trying to think outside the box and consider ways that you can build these calming and movement activities in. Um, so, I would say that there's a wide variety of calming activities and coping tools. And this might be, for some, it may not be the right time. And for others, this might be the perfect time to begin to really addressing some of these calming routines and teaching your child or adult with autism some of these coping strategies that they can practice and use. So when thinking of coping tools to teach your child, you might need to try a variety of strategies and just observe what they gravitate towards or what they're enjoying a little bit more. Um, and we can, of course, for some, you can help to identify what might be appropriate coping strategy or calm down routine just by asking them what makes them feel calm. For others, of course, that may not be feasible, and you would just observe their behavior or their demeanor as you engage them in some of these calming activities to see if they have a calm body, a calm voice, and of course, kind of observe and assess their willingness to even give it a try for a few brief moments. I've had a lot of conversations with parents lately where the first few times we try these activities, they don't feel very successful, but often it takes more than one or two attempts to kind of get some momentum going. And then the individual starts to understand the activity. And for some, it can become a highly preferred and relaxing and calming routine. So I would say just don't give up after one go. Um, but there's so many examples, great examples of creative approaches, whether it's yoga routines, and there's a lot of free apps out there online right now. Breathing, calm down, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Minecraft breathing is just but one example. Block breathing, where you breathe in for the count of 5 and out for the count of 5 and breathe in for the count of 5. There's a wide variety of tools and strategies that are freely available online right now to support these efforts. Um, Reading a story, coloring, journaling, squeezing a fidget item, sensory activities, of course. Obviously, these are going to be individually determined and individually tailored, but just thinking about what might be something to try and introduce during this time that might become a long-term calming and coping strategy for the individual with autism to keep in their toolbox and use now, but also in the future when things, presumably go back to normal, and they're going back to school or going back to whatever environments and activities they were engaged in before this. And I would say that, once you've identified coping activities, calm down routines that seem to have, might work for for your child with autism, um, it's important to practice them on a regular basis. And I would encourage you to try to practice these at least once a day for a few minutes, maybe try to build in several times per day as part of your plan, as part of that broader structure. Practicing our calm down or our happiness routines, or whatever you want to call those, whatever going to be meaningful for the individual with autism is how you're going to want to frame that. But thinking about this as like a skill, like riding a bike or learning how to play the piano. Of course, if we don't practice these strategies, we're not going to be very good at them. Um, and so building those into the day, and trying to model those, as the parent or caregiver yourself. And again, I need to do a better job with this as I'm trying to teach my own kids calm down routines. I need to do that as well and model for them what I'm hoping that they will do. And so when I can see that, when you see that your child is upset, rather than saying, oh, you need to go calm down, you need to go do your breathing, of course, try to label their emotion in a validating manner and model the tool for them. So I think we're both feeling really frustrated. I'm going to use my balloon breathing right now. And you model it and show it in that moment. And that can really, for some, that can validate their emotions, and it can also provide the model that they need to then go on and practice that strategy in that situation. So these kind of strategies do require repeated practice when the individual is calm. And I would say that for some, this can be the right time to start to build these strategies into their repertoire, into their toolbox, so they're more likely to use them long term. In addition to, kind of calming and relaxation activities, of course, for so many, movement is going to be really important right now and always probably. So proactively planned movement breaks and calming activities might need to be very frequently included in the day for some. And I'm sure I don't need, you don't need me to tell you that. You can observe your child and you can see and for some, their need for movement that's very frequent. And so making sure you're trying where you can to build those into their day and using creative approaches and creative materials and a lot of great online resources for this right now. These are the ones that I've picked and pulled and I'm using with some folks with autism. So for example, the Special Olympics, their School of Strength is what it's called. And if you go online to specialolympics.org, the School of Strength is offering some free, very easily accessible exercise activities and little classes. And so I'd encourage you to check that out. There's other ones here as well. And you guys are all going to get this webinar afterwards, or you actually have it, I think, available to you now. So you can look at these resources and consider them further. And these are just a few of the good ones that I know about that have some relevance for some folks with autism. So finally, the last, area that I just wanted to briefly touch on, so far, again, just to kind of give you a quick review, I've briefly talked about making a big plan for your day, holding on to the big activities that matter most and using those to anchor your day. So if that's meal times and shower or bathing routines, snack times, screen time, schoolwork, having those areas delineated in your master plan for how you think the day should look, and then breaking that plan down in a way that's visual and understandable for the individual with autism is going to be really, really important. And then in conjunction with that, breaking the hard stuff up. So thinking about what are the most challenging or difficult parts of the day for my child, and how can I try to break those up and sandwich between those hard times, highly preferred or calming activities that they are motivated to access. And so trying to make sure you're being, somewhat careful about planning that out in a way that might promote more momentum for your child and kind of get your kid going on the right trajectory across their day. So maybe it's they wake up, they brush teeth, we have breakfast, then we do quick showers. Then it's, after shower is done, then you get your, maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes of TV or cartoon time or whatever. Then we're going to start our first round of online schoolwork that we need to do. And maybe that's a 15-minute chunk. And then we're going to take a 10-minute movement break. And so just, thinking about how to break the day up in a way that might promote a little bit more success for your child or children during these challenging times. And then just, celebrating the little successes and being creative where you can. And I'm not saying you need to be Mary Poppins creative every day, because goodness knows I'm not. I'm just saying, even if it's once a week of bringing in a new creative idea, a new activity, a new, any kind of new activity that might, get some traction with the child with autism and might become something that's interesting and motivating to them. So thinking about how to bring that to your day as best you can. And then so this last area I wanted to touch on is just being the calm in the storm. And again, I know some of you are facing some very challenging problem behavior probably right now, I'm assuming. And so it's just important, and I know that this is easier said than done. By far, maybe the area where it's easier said than done, because it can be very stressful to see your child with autism or your adult child with autism distressed. And that can provoke a lot of feelings and emotions in us as parents as well. So doing the best you can. Nobody is perfect. We are not robots. We all have emotions. And our children push our buttons about better than anybody else. At least in my house, this is true. So, but just trying to remember that an escalated person cannot de-escalate another person. So I, as the parent, if I am escalated, I am not going to be able to successfully calm my child down very well or help them to get calm. And so if this is the area, remember at the beginning of this webinar, I said pick one area that you want to focus on and don't aim for perfection. if this is the area where you feel like you want to focus because you're having a lot of these challenging escalated episodes and you're trying to figure out ways, and maybe you don't have all the support that you typically would because of course we're all, basically quarantined in our home, and so maybe you're not even getting the services and support that you might typically get. So thinking about what can you do, what's going to be your plan for calming yourself down as the caregiver or parent, recognizing what your triggers are, what makes you really upset, or what starts to get your heart racing, what really gets under your skin, for example, with your own child with autism or without. And then knowing your warning signs, knowing what are those early signs that you feel in yourself that tell you I am going to struggle to manage my own emotions, this situation well. And so recognizing those first, I think, is really important. Just like we want to recognize the triggers of problem behavior in our children with autism, we also need to know what our own triggers are. And then making a plan for our own behavior as parents and caregivers as your child is getting upset in whatever way that looks for your child with autism or whatever problem behavior they're exhibiting. What's going to be your basic plan? What are you going to say and do? And what is everybody in the house going to say and do? And what are they not going to say and do in those moments where things are becoming escalated? And maybe that involves writing out a little plan for yourself about what is going to be your basic approach, your basic script for how you're going to try to deal with that situation when it comes around. And then the other piece that I would say, as it pertains to kind of before these escalations are happening, and I know you guys have probably heard this 1,000 times, and this is, again, easier said than done, but trying to practice self-care where you can, whether that's for some folks, maybe they're able to do that for like an hour a day. Some folks, that's not even close to realistic. It's like 5 minutes maybe is all you're able to get. And so, but I would say that there's a lot of great resources out there. The Autism Society has certainly developed, our own autism resource specialists have certainly developed a lot of great resources on the topic of self-care. We've got blogs, we've got a webinar devoted to the topic. I just recently discovered a great webinar series developed by the Autism Science Foundation. Those are some of the preeminent researchers and scholars in our field who have developed some online freely available webinars. And two of the areas that they address in this series are self-care and resilience among families during these challenging times. And so I would encourage you to take a look at the Autism Science Foundation's webinar series, and I've provided the link for you here. So kind of going back to, before the escalation, again, thinking about what are your triggers? What makes you so upset? What are the things your child says or does that really, trigger you the most? And then in those moments, what's going to be the coping strategies that you use to try to stay calm and to avoid getting escalated yourself? And then when the time comes, I know this is easier said than done, trying to not take it personally, because remembering that your child or adult child with autism may not have the coping skills, the social communication skills, the social filter, the impulse control necessary to regulate their own emotions and behavior in this situation. And so when these situations happen, that's why it's so important for us to try to keep our emotions in check, trying to not take it personally, trying to remember that this will end. This situation will end. It might take a long time in some cases, but this will end. We will get through this and over to the other side of this particular problem behavior episode. And so trying to keep that in mind, and trying to have a calm body, a calm voice, calm posture as best you can, so that you're not inadvertently fueling the fire of problem behavior in these escalated situations. And this kind of goes back to, this is something that I don't always do with my own, particularly my middle child, who has a pretty hot temper and he flares up pretty fast. So sometimes I'm not honoring those early signs that he's getting agitated, and I'm still pushing as mom. I'm still pushing him to keep going with the next math problem, or I'm still pushing him to keep going with whatever it is I've asked him to do. And sometimes I need to recognize that those early signs of agitation are the signals to me that I need to back off and give him space and time. And so, of course, this is true for many folks with autism as well. So adjusting, we need to change and restructure our behavior in these first signs of agitation that we see in our children with autism. And so giving one or two reasonable options or choices in that moment when you see those early signs. Okay, I hear you. You do not want to do reading right now. So would you rather do 5 math problems, or do you want to take a walk with me first and then we'll come back to reading? So giving a couple choices and presenting those choices in meaningful and understandable ways for the child with autism. The other thing I would say around adjusting is rationing your words, being careful how much language you're using when the individual with autism is becoming escalated, when they're showing those early signs. Many of us are guilty of talking too much and not giving the individual with autism time to process the situation. And so we're using too much language. And I would say this is true not only for folks who have limited language or have limited ability to understand what we're communicating, but also for individuals who have lots of language, who are fluent in their language. We need to be sure that we are still rationing our words and minimizing what we're saying, and maybe using gestures and using visual supports to do the talking for us in these escalating moments. For some, of course, you want to get out of their physical space, get out of their physical proximity, and give them physical space and time to calm down. And then only re-engage when they show you the signs that they're ready to be re-engaged. If the head is still down on the table and they're still, banging on the table or cursing under their breath or doing whatever it is that they're doing, then they're not ready for you to re-engage them. And so try to honor those signs and stay away and give them the space to calm down. Restoring calm and staying calm is far more important. And I'm finding this with in my own house with my own children. That's more important than getting the schoolwork done in many cases. So, just keeping your eye on sight of what matters most right now. What do we need to do? We need to stay calm and safe and happy in these really challenging times as best we can. And so trying to follow the child's lead that when they're telling you they're ready for you to re-engage you and reapproach. And then, of course, modifying your expectations and demands. This is, again, if we're thinking about online learning demands, for example, breaking that up and then changing what you expect the child to do. If they're showing you that this is really stressful and frustrating, then cutting down the amount of work that you're going to ask them to complete that day, cutting down the amount of chores, cutting down the activities that you're presenting, and changing your level of demand to meet where they're showing you that they are. So just honoring these early signs of agitation in folks with autism is really, really important. And it can prevent the more major outbursts, major escalations that we don't want to see. So again, this is a quick webinar touching on basic strategies. These are the major areas that I touched on. Again, don't aim for perfection and just pick one, and I'm sure many of you all have heard a lot of these strategies before. So today, for you, maybe it's just taking one of these ideas and refining it, picking the trouble spots. Where's the hot spots? Where are the hot spots in your day with your child with autism? So pick one of those hot spots and then think about what might you be able to restructure or re-engineer that might make those interactions more successful during these challenging times and beyond. Just be kind to yourself. You have the hardest job. Pairing a parent is the hardest job, and pairing a child with autism can be supremely challenging as well as rewarding, I know. But just be kind to yourself, and you just remember that you're doing the best you can. A couple other quick things I just wanted to touch on. I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that there are some resources available. There's a lot of resources and support out there, but there's never enough actually out there, and certainly not during these challenging times. But I wanted to make you all aware of a service that my department, the clinical department at the Autism Society, is offering statewide from Cherokee to the Outer Banks and everywhere in between. We're offering a rapid response consultation service that's provided across the state. And the reason we're able to do it anywhere in any county in North Carolina, no matter where you live, is because we're offering it through a telehealth model. So telehealth, optimal telehealth is where, and I'm sure many of you know this, it's two-way live video conferencing. So we would use one of our HIPAA compliant platforms where we'd be engaging with you as the parent in trying to provide you consultation and troubleshooting around whatever challenges or areas you're hoping to address. And so this rapid response consult, the reason we're calling it that is because once we, kind of do a preliminary discussion with you and confirm that the service is appropriate for you, given the needs that you're expressing, then we would deploy a clinical professional. So that's a licensed psychologist and or a board certified behavior analyst to provide consultation to you within that same week and get started right away in providing support to you. It's a short-term consultation service, and it's funded. So how is it paid for? So there's a variety of different funders for this. The Innovations Waiver is one. So if your child is on the, or your child or adult is on the Innovations Waiver, this service can be funded through specialized consultative services. It also can be funded through traditional Medicaid for children under the age of 21. Certainly the service is accessible through traditional Medicaid under the age of 21. It's also available for adults who are receiving Medicaid through outpatient behavioral health services. And we're already doing this right now. So these funding sources are already happening. I mean, we're already accessing these. Also, for some of you, your private health insurance plans might fund this service. Of course, your child or adult has to have an established diagnosis of autism in order for us to provide the service. I just wanted to say that the service is intended to address a variety of areas. It may be around enhancing structure or promoting social communication and other skill areas. It might be around basic behavior intervention strategies or quick tips and strategies to kind of promote or enhance your child's play skills and social communication and level of social engagement during these challenging times, or coming up with creative activities and approaches to get engagement in the individual with autism. What the service is not intended to do, I want to say, is address extreme forms of problem behavior or mental health crisis. And it's not a replacement for a behavior support plan. And the reason I'm making this strong disclaimer is because this is a telehealth service. And so it wouldn't be appropriate or safe necessarily for us to try to provide teleconsultation to address a severe, dangerous, crisis type behavior. However, if you're experiencing something like that, I do want you to reach out to us and we can talk about other ways we might be able to, get you to the right resources and try to provide other forms of support. So I just wanted to make you aware of this new model that we're just launching that's available to you. And so if you're interested in learning more about it, this is the contact information. You all are going to have this in your webinar slides. And I also just want to make sure you all know that, of course, there's a lot of great resources on the Autism Society's website. There's also amazing resources that are being offered by other entities like, of course, UNC Chapel Hill has an amazing toolkit out there right now. I'm sorry, I'm flipping ahead to it. There's a lot of great resources available to you. I just wanted to remind you that we've developed, and a lot of folks are out there developing a lot of examples of social stories or social narratives that are specifically addressing these challenging times. And we are adding more social narratives to our own website all the time. And we're generating a lot of those at this point. Also want to just remind you again that we've got a lot of recorded free webinars on our website that go into much greater detail on the topics that I've addressed so far today, and on a variety of other topics that might be appropriate and helpful to you during these challenging times. And so just lastly, I just wanted to say that, of course, the Autism Society, we're recommending that you, of course, please check out the CDC or the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services for more information specific on coronavirus. Obviously, these are highly reputable and credible sources of information. And so we just always want to make sure we're trying to encourage folks to go to these sources. So without further ado, I really appreciate your time today. And I hope that you, any of you all who have questions, will send those through the chat feature. If you have more detailed questions, you are free. I would encourage you to please reach out to me. My email is on the front slide of this presentation. If you're interested in learning more about the consultative service, I encourage you to reach out. So we're here to help. We're here to be a resource to you. And I know that Amy Seeley, our statewide chapter director, is also on the webinar, of course, as you know. So if you guys have questions, send them through and I'll try to address any that I can right here and now.
Thank you, Louise. I am watching for questions. But while we're watching, I have one that was sent in previously. We told people they could submit ahead of time. So we could take a look at some of these if we're not hearing any from the people here tonight. So here's one. My child is in a self-contained class and I don't think he can do the work his teacher sent. Is it because I don't know how to teach him or is the work too hard? I don't want him to fall behind, but I don't know what to do.
That's a great question, and I bet you are one people have experiencing this right now. So I would say that I can't answer it, and I know you didn't exactly expect me to be able to say, is it that he can't do the work, or is it that you're not sure how to present it in the best way? I would
Right.
bet, of course, that this is not so much about your inability to do what's needed, but more so maybe there's an issue with the content and the way that the content is being presented. And so obviously the first place I'm going to direct you back to is going back to the teacher and of course tactfully and carefully presenting an email, expressing your concerns and asking for more support and clarity around what's the best way to present this information. Or if you're concerned that the information or the content that they're being sent is not at your child's instructional level, then express that, and ask for help. Your teachers are still, of course, working, and I'm a former special education teacher, longtime teacher, and so I know that this is a really challenging time for our educators. But I would encourage you go back to them and go to them for the guidance and support. And then, of course, if you're still needing, ideas or tips, reach out to me. And I'm happy to try to, provide you with some ideas and strategies. But obviously, the first go-to has to be back to your LEA and to your special education teacher. Um, I know that didn't really give you everything you needed, but that's definitely where I would go.
Yeah, we do encourage people to email us with the details because yeah, it's going to be a question and answer back and forth, I'm sure, on a lot of these. This is one though that I remember I had with my son when I tried to use the schedule. This person has a 12-year-old and she's trying to do a schedule, but he says there's no point. It's summer vacation. And so he's just refusing. So what do you do if they just flat out refuse? My son told me that his little check off list was just an extra thing to do and he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, and again, it sounds like this individual's got some very strong, skills in the area of negotiation and argument.
Oh,
And so I would say that I would say a few things. And I know, so one thing I would say is that if this individual is kind of, sort of thinking in terms of black and white around this, that it might be helpful to provide a basic explanation or social story. And I don't mean it sounds like this is a 12-year-old individual who has a good bit of skills and language and level of understanding. So I don't mean a baby-like social story, but I mean a written explanation that clarifies that we're not in summer school or we're not in summer right now, and it is still school time, and that he could get a bad grade on his report card. And whether that's true or not, I'm not exactly sure, but trying to present the possible outcome or consequence if he doesn't get his work done. And then instead also emphasizing, okay, here's what we can do. And then sitting down with that child and making a plan where you can try to come to some agreement, making a written plan and getting his buy-in and input as much as you possibly can. And if there's things he's highly motivated to access, and I have no idea what this 12-year-old's into, but if I hypothetically, let's say he's real into screen time and video games, then I would end the schedule so that he's going to have to get some of those less preferred activities done, whether it's schoolwork or whether it's chores or whatever it is, before he's going to get to access his first screen time break of the day. And so, that might produce a little bit of frustration or a lot of frustration at first, but kind of sticking to your plan and holding your ground and presenting the structure of the day in that way is certainly something that I would make sure, that you're thinking about. And again, if that doesn't answer your question, then definitely reach out and we can try to troubleshoot more around the nitty gritty of it. Um, yeah, I hear you. Because I mean, we're home. I don't, when I'm at school, I do schoolwork. And when I'm at home, I don't do schoolwork. And so this is a really confusing, blurred, where the lines are very blurred for everybody. And so for our folks with autism, trying to signal that and make it very clear and concrete that we are still having to do schoolwork. This is what everybody's doing right now. And trying to convey that in a way that the individual can understand is really important. Yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you all for your time tonight. I know this is, if like, that you've got a lot going on right now. And so carving out any time at all, I know it can be really, really challenging. So I'm glad that you were able to join. I hope, maybe just you took away one little nugget or thinking about a way to refine one little area. And again, please reach out with additional needs or supports or services that you're looking for. And thank you guys again, and I wish you all the very best during this time and beyond.